Hi, everybody. I'm Alyce-Kay from SufferingWell and the How Initiative. And in a moment, I'm going to be showing you more of an interview that I did with my mother a couple years ago about a prayer walk that we both were involved in. Now, I want to say right from the beginning, we are not suggesting that you should do this kind of prayer walk. You're welcome to. That's great if you do. But this was a long 6-week thing. It was 40 days. And my mom's done longer ones too, including one all the way across the US. But we wanted to tell you about this too for several different reasons. First of all, just to give you an idea of what prayer walking can be and to hopefully get you excited about prayer walking in your neighborhood, in your town, where you go on vacation, whatever, just spending some time doing that. The other thing is that we wanted to help you to recognize the way that God's working in your life. Sometimes it helps to see things in bigger examples. And then you can notice the smaller things that are similar to that in your own life. And you can see how God's talking to you, how he's showing you things, how he's working his wonders around you, and it will help to build your faith. And then thirdly, we want you to see not only the importance of prayer, but the absolute necessity of prayer in building a relationship with God, but also in trying to make a difference in the world. We're asking you right now to be praying for God to heal our world. Hopefully you've chosen a country to pray for. If you haven't, we'd love it if you would. And please do let us know what country you choose so that we can see if we've got all the countries covered. Right now, at the time that I'm recording this, we still have 183 countries to go. So we need you. But it's a big ask to be asking God to heal our world. And we know that takes a lot of faith. And maybe you, like Beth Ann in the novel, maybe you're a little cynical about that, and that's okay. But listening to stories like this will help to grow your faith so that you will feel comfortable asking God, please heal our world. Without any further ado, I'm going to take you to the rest of the interview.
So let's go back a little bit to San Diego, because
Mhm.
this on our first day in San Diego, I mean, this was like, that was a huge day. We started out at the mission. We were told about Ash Wednesday and Lent. We had the crosses made on us and everything. We went out, we found the palm branches, and then there was another really important thing that happened.
Um,
Mom's
we
going,
were
I can't read your mind.
we, we went to the University of San Diego
Uh-huh.
and we did a lot of walking around the campus, I think first,
Mhm.
and then we walked. What were we walking to?
We were walking to the library. Mom, this is a quiz show. I'm just giving you hints and you have to come up with the answers.
That's right.
I'm sorry, you
And I'm
guys.
trying to remember.
It's
And
like,
remember, your mother is 80 years old.
and this is not a problem with her memory. It's a problem that I'm just like saying things and expecting her to read my mind because we had this shared experience, you know. But yeah, so we were walking to the
So,
library, which was built to be shaped like a banyan tree, which is where,
that's right.
Buddha was enlightened, was under a banyan tree. And do you remember what the path was?
And we were walking up this path, and at first we didn't realize what it was. But as we got up, I think near the top, we realized it was a serpent that we were walking on. We were treading on a serpent.
Yeah. At first it was kind of like, okay, are we just like making this up? Oh, it's like a serpent. But we went back to the beginning and there was actually the serpent's tongue and everything. And there was a
Mhm.
quote from Milton from Paradise Lost. And so we were actually walking on this, and the whole way that the whole thing was done was really anti-God. Not what
Mhm.
we did, but
Oh,
what
yeah,
it was very like, it was kind of making
right.
fun of God, making fun of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so yeah, so then we walked up the serpent again, knowing what we were doing, knowing that we were treading
Yeah.
on the serpent. And Steve, do you remember what we sang? What Steve had us sing?
Oh, I remember. I can't think of it now.
He said let's not try to conquer this with man's wisdom. Let's be childlike, because Jesus said that you have to have the faith of a child. And what's the most childlike song that we can come up with? And we decided Jesus loves me.
Loves me.
So
Yeah.
we sang Jesus loves me, probably all of us completely weeping, you know.
Yeah.
It was a very emotional day, but we're walking up the serpent, treading on the serpent, singing Jesus loves me. And I think that was just incredibly, incredibly powerful. And then we've also found out that there were students who walked around that library every single day praying. That was
Wow.
really cool.
That's
Yeah.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were other
Yeah.
things at the university that were spiritually very concerning. I mean, not just your normal university stuff, but stuff that was very intentionally anti-God.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
And this was back in 1995.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess we should give the dates to put it in perspective,
yeah.
especially when we talk about things like the storm of the century. It really was the storm of the century, because we were almost at the end of the century, and this was like the worst storm of the whole century. It was just, well, I think actually the next year or so we had El Nino, which was even worse, but it was the worst. It was the storm of the century so far.
I was thinking about the area in just past Robles, where we went to the Mission San Antonio. Yeah, Mission San Antonio. And it was raining that day too. And the power team had to walk down a section where
most of us drove through that because you guys were walking it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And we
We had
driving.
to go through didn't we have to go through a military camp or something?
We did.
Yes.
We did. And but our part first took us on the railroad track. We walked on the railroad track basically because there wasn't too much else to walk on. There were places where we could get off if a train came. So it wasn't quite as bad as that one. But we walked down the railroad track quite a bit. And we had Brenda with us that day too. So we were really watchful for her. And then we ended up walking, we were skipped ahead to another section that was through the military base and then into the end. And our sections had taken longer. Most of the team was already at the mission. They were meeting with the missions, with the priests and the others there. And we came in dripping wet. And they were so kindly bringing blankets to people that were wet.
They put the blankets in the dryer to warm them up for us.
Yes. And then they would take our clothes while we wore those blankets.
And they gave us really good soup too. I remember that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that too.
It was
and they were
so
nice.
Yeah.
Too.
And I don't think they were expecting us, right? I don't think they were, because we weren't really planning on,
right.
doing more
I
than
think they knew that we were going to be coming through sometime, if I remember right, but they didn't know we were coming that day or anything. And so, but they treated us like, wow.
Yeah, the hospitality, of these priests.
Incredible hospitality.
Yeah, they were just.
And that hot soup was so perfect that day.
It was
just what we needed.
It was wonderful.
No.
One of the things on this walk, so we had a person here who was actually with us, who was mapping California, this part of California, mapping the territorial spirits, because what happens is there are some spirits who are assigned to certain places. Like in Daniel, it talks about, I think it's Michael, the archangel, that was fighting the spirit of Babylon before he could get to Daniel. And so certain spirits, and what we were noticing was, if you looked at what had happened with the Native Americans there and what had happened with the Americans or other nationalities there, and then what was happening in present day, it was all very related in that one place. And we would see that happening over and over and over. And so there was just like these same things happening, even though you had different peoples, different cultures, you'd have these same things happening over and over. So I think one of the places that illustrated that the most was Soledad. And we had this amazing team. I mean, people who were just very, very dedicated to the Lord. And some of them were great leaders that I had no clue that they were great leaders until afterwards. I didn't know that they were anybody. I don't know about you, Mom, if you knew, but
Right.
like Lou, and
Right.
stuff.
I have no idea who he was.
Yeah, and he came fasting. He was at the end of a 40-day fast, so like some of the guys had to kind of like carry him,
Mhm.
with his arms around their shoulders and stuff, and just some other really amazing people, just totally amazing people. But why was I saying this? Okay, so and we had a pretty united team. I think there were, a couple little things here and there, but it was a pretty united team. And and so we had noticed these things about territorial spirits. And one thing that we did was every morning we would have a meeting, usually outside, unless it was during that part where it was raining. And we would stand around in a circle. And one of the cute things about this was Samantha, who was 7
Yeah.
years old, and she wore like the same sweater through the whole walk. And she, probably because I always wear the same clothes all the time too. But she would go around from person to person and just hug them, because we'd have these meetings standing up. We'd be standing up for an hour or two, and she'd go around from one person to the next, just hugging them, long hugs, so 5-10 minute hugs, and then she'd move on to the next person and hug them, and that was just so cool. But we all we were so close and everything, and then all of a sudden we got to Soledad, and Soledad had 3 priests at different times die at the altar. And then there was like there were like all these weird diseases that had gone through there, and now there's a prison there. Okay, so it's like, and Soledad means loneliness, I think, or something like that, solitude or something like that. Anyway,
Something like that.
yeah. And so we're having our team meeting, and all of a sudden, literally all hell breaks loose, because we were just fighting. I mean, it was bad. And it was not the way that the team had been.
Right.
And it was really hard. And I think that we were pretty close to just calling it quits at one point. And then
I know everybody was upset. It seemed like.
we were all upset. And then Steve, who was the leader, he was the main leader, and then Mike was after him. Steve, this really impressed me, because he knew that as a leader, he needed to be humble. And so he humbled himself, and he went to each one of us individually and apologized to us for whatever he had done, and asked us specifically to stay on the walk. And that didn't really mend everything, but it did turn things.
Yeah.
And so then I think where the real mending took place was not very much longer, a few days later, when we were in Monterey. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and tell about that?
That was where one of our team members actually lived in Monterey. And we spent a lot of time at his house, a couple of days, I think, that we were in that area. And on a Sunday, we were at his house. And I don't remember exactly how it came about, but we ended up doing a foot washing.
And I think Steve was the one who initiated it. Steve started washing people's feet.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. And so just one by one, not in any order, just as we felt led, we would come up and wash somebody's feet. And usually it was somebody we'd had a hard time with, or somebody who had really honored us in some way. Something that was really special about it. And it was just really absolutely amazing. So I think I had washed Michael and Shari's feet, because they had spent so much time with me and really encouraging me, as well as we encouraged each other. Since we were 3 that were together constantly. So
yeah, it was just really neat. And I think that again was a demonstration of, I'm not sure that was a demonstration of territorial spirits, but that was a demonstration of the spirits that had been nurtured in their house. He was a pastor, right? And she was also a music minister, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So I think for 2 different churches even. And so there was just a lot of things that had happened in that house that, the Holy Spirit had just really worked in. So that kind of atmosphere was already set up there, without us having anything to do with that. You just walk into that spiritual atmosphere and it's there. And so it was a really, really beautiful time. And I think that it did I think it mended everything with the team.
I think
Sure.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were pretty unified again after that.
Yeah.
And the man that lived there, he was known to the team as Bunny Man, because his wife had given him a little bunny rabbit, a stuffed bunny rabbit, to take with him on the walk. She wasn't on the walk with us, and it was just to remember her by. And so he wore it in his backpack where it was poking out. You could
Right.
see it all the time.
And so the kids
And
first called him Benny Man, and then
right,
everybody else picked up on that.
everybody knew him that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he taught us
Yeah.
a lot of neat things.
Mhm.
I mean, he seemed elderly to me then, but I think he was probably younger than I am now.
Yeah. I know.
But like he taught us every time that you see a penny on the road to pick it up and to say, God will never leave me nor forsake me. And that became a tradition for my family, that I had my kids do that. One time, one of my daughters found a $20 bill, and I said, you have to say it 2,000 times because there's 2,000 pennies in there. But it was just this reminder. And, you know, and if you look up where that comes from, it's from Hebrews 13. And it's where God's talking about money. That's why it was the penny that when we pick it up, but he's talking about finances. And then he says, you know, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And then the answer to that is, what can man do to me? What can mere man do to me? So it's just a really, really powerful thing. And throughout my life at various times, God brought pennies in my path to pick up when I needed that message. So it was really neat how that kind of, there's a lot of things from the walk that I think continue to minister in our lives, throughout our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really cool. But there was just a lot that, you know, the girls, even though they were 6, 7, and 8 years old, I think that they understood, you know, everything really.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, even these really deep spiritual truths, people were careful to present them in a way that the girls understood. And I think that was really neat. I think they were able to grow a lot from that.
I think one of the missions that I really enjoyed was San Juan Bautista. We walked into that, and that turned out to be a kind of a big meeting. We always had prayer at the missions.
Right.
We always had a time of prayer.
And we always had different people got to ring the bell.
Yes, that's right.
That was the privilege to be able to do that.
It really was. It was very meaningful.
Yeah.
And we walked into San Juan Bautista, and then we are into the area of the mission. And that day, a pastor was supposed to be meeting us there to pray with the team from the San Jose area. And at that time, my son Daryl was and your brother was working at a church in San Jose, and he was sent to come and pray with us. So he was the one, and I had no idea he was going to be there. I don't think any of us knew that.
Right. They just said, we're sending a pastor, and
yeah,
that was.
So there it was, our son, my son, and her brother, and it was just a real special time for us. And that was an area we went up to. Do you remember what that mountain was called? I want to say Francisco or something.
I do not remember.
Anyway, we all went up. I think we all went up there, that mountain. Some drove and some walked, and prayed up at the top of that mountain over that area too.
Yeah, we tried to, like, if there was a place that was really high where we could see and just kind of pray over the whole area, we would do that quite often.
Coming into San Jose. Yes.
Okay, San Jose.
Coming into San Jose, there was, as we walked into the city, coming into it, we were coming to this one intersection, and I just all of a sudden felt like I couldn't even move. I couldn't go forward. And I think because this was the area where I was from, it was hitting me really hard. And so, you know, Gene Brooks came up and he prayed.
Gene was the one who was doing the mapping.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so he came up and he prayed over that area. And then all of a sudden I felt like I could just move again. And I went. Now, I've never had an experience like that before, never since. It was very real at that time. I could hardly breathe.
Yeah.
The nights we were each assigned to private homes. They had gone through massive planning to arrange all these homes for us to stay in, because a team of 23, and you could only have a few in each home. And usually Alyce-Kay and I and the three girls were put together to keep our family together. Sometimes I was separated from them and put with somebody else, or maybe one of the girls was put with me someplace. But the people whose homes we stayed in were just incredible.
They were amazing.
Oh, they ministered to us so beautifully and met our needs. And it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was really neat. We also had a saying, or Steve, I think, had a saying: if you see a bed, sleep. If you see food, eat. If you see a bench, sit. Because you never, or if you see a bathroom, use it. Because we never knew when any of those things were going to be available to us. And there were a couple places where we didn't have places lined up ahead of time. We were just going to go to a church that I think the churches knew we were coming, but they hadn't lined it up ahead of time as far as we knew. And it was like, kind of sorting things out. I think some of the men stayed one time in a church and slept on the floor at the church.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So Virginia, who joined us partway through, oh my word, she was so wonderful. She became like the mother to all five of us, to all three generations in our family. But she took over driving my van. I had brought my van. I was walking, but different people drove my van as one of the support vehicles. So she took over driving my van, and she especially took charge of Lois. Lois was 6 years old. We're walking through Atascadero. It's pouring down rain. So there's rain puddles all the way. What does a 6-year-old do with rain puddles? Oh my word, she's in heaven. But Virginia would drive very slowly alongside us. And every time that there was a rain puddle, she would stop the car, jump out, grab Lois, put her in the van, go past the rain puddle, and then put Lois out until Lois got to the point where she was crying because she wanted to splash in a rain puddle. She was just, oh man, Virginia was such a blessing. I mean, she mothered us five. I don't think she really mothered anybody else. It was us five, our family, you and me and the kids, that she just like took charge of and just became the mama. And she was just, it was awesome.
Yeah, it really was. One time I walked with Lois, so that she wanted to walk with me one day, and we were walking from outside of Solvang, Santa Ynez mission there, to La Purísima mission, which was
my favorites. Yeah.
La Purísima is my all-time favorite mission.
It is beautiful.
And so Lois and I were walking, so we got behind the rest of the ones that were walking with us, and because she wasn't a fast walker and she couldn't do it, but she really wanted to walk with me. So I did that with her that day, and I think she walked about a mile and a half, something like that. And so then I waited for a ride to come for her. I put in a call and waited for a ride to come to pick her up, and then I walked on. Well, the rest of that walk, I was trying to catch up with the rest of the team and get there.
Yeah, that's when you got clocked at 6 miles an hour.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how long I did that for 6 miles an hour, but it was
pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say that at the first part of the time when Samantha started doing that, which was, I think, right at the beginning, she started hugging everybody. Nobody really noticed what she was doing. She just came along and she'd be hugging you, and you'd be listening or talking, and then she would move on, and you didn't really think about it. And then all of a sudden somebody realized, she's doing this every time.
And she did for the whole meeting, which was sometimes 2-3 hours. She would just go around hugging people for a long, long time. Yeah. It was her ministry on that.
It really was. Yeah. It was amazing.
It was very cool. So, the girls, the 6, 7, and 8 years old. Okay. Remember, you guys, they were just as much a part of the team and just as integral a part of the team as the rest of the people. They had very important roles on that.
And
And
everybody accepted that.
oh yeah. Yeah. And different people took turns walking with them. That was scary for me sometimes, because it was like, do I really trust this person? Are they going to watch out as I walk across these streets? Are they going to watch out for the, I did have one situation that wasn't so good, but that made me a little afraid after that. But, yeah, somebody who didn't really know how to watch over kids, but but God took care of them. But it was neat, because the girls would, and I think at one point Steve said, if you haven't walked with one of the girls, sometimes you need to walk with them and listen to them praying, because Jesus loves the prayers of children. And so, learning to imitate their prayers and stuff.
The grand finale was just so amazing. We've already touched on that, but just at the mission, there was a park there, and we all kind of met there, and they had a loudspeaker and everything, and
a lot of people waiting for us too, and some people who had walked with us in different cities that came there to either walk with us in San Francisco or to wait for us. And you'll see this on the video too. A good portion of the video is San Francisco, I think. But yeah, we all came walking with the palm branches, and they had this praise music going, and Steve talked to the group for a while, and it was very emotional, of course, because it was the end of this, and many of us were seeing our families for the first time in 6 weeks, and and stuff, and
it was beautiful. That was a beautiful experience there that day.
And I remember Steve got to ring the bell in San Francisco, and I think everybody was crying, but you could see him. I don't know if he actually cried, but you could see
he was very emotional.
Yeah, you could see how meaningful this was to him, because this really came to fruition. And it really, as they were planning it, as he and Mike were planning it, there were times when it looked like it just wasn't possible to do this. And so to actually see this happen, was really, really neat. So you guys be sure to see that video. I'll have it below, because it's just amazing. It's a great video, and I think anybody who watches it is blessed by it. So is there anything else that you want to say, Mom?
I think we've covered it pretty well.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to think of other things, so we may have a PS video. So, thank you for joining us. I know this was not so much of an informational video as just kind of a reminiscing time and everything, but I hope that you enjoyed it. It was just a really neat experience, and I hope that it inspires some of you to do something. It doesn't have to be big. Just walk through your neighborhood and pray. If you haven't watched the video about prayer walking for normal people, be sure to watch that, because we talk a lot about how you can prayer walk. And even if you can't walk, like I cannot walk right now, I do not have the ability to walk right now, but God's working on healing me. But even if you can't walk, we have tips for how you can still prayer walk through your community. So, all right, we love you all, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.